What's going on, everybody? This is your tour guide around the SWAC C Wells coming at you with another video today. Y'all make sure y'all lock in with us. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and become a part of the SWAC Talk family by becoming a member. 99 cents gets you a membership to the YouTube channel. We have special perks coming at you. We're going to be dropping special members only videos and shorts. I'm going to have rants and reactions to different things that I want to put there. So if you want to get everything, man, become a member of the Swag Talk crew for 99 cents and get down with the get down, man. And so we're going to still be bringing y'all a lot of stuff, swag smoke and everything like that, and all our normal videos. But we also bring y'all that membership tier. So get down with that. Check out the Facebook and Instagram, both Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. And now let's get on with the show, man. Let's do it.
Chelsea Bojo guy. Wednesday, Sundays, catch the ride. Football hoops, we breaking wide. Stats and facts, truth on high. SWAT talk where the convo's real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Hit the corner of the field, we strategize. Breaking the game down, no disguise. Play by play, we analyze. I wear sharp, we magnify. SWAT talk where the convo's real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays, heat, Sundays, ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk where the convo's real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Cats pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays, heat, Sundays, ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk when the convo's real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Cats pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel.
All right, everybody, what is going on? It is your tour guide around the SWAC C Wells coming at you. And today we're going to start off our 2025 previews. I was going to drop this video. I was going to record this video and drop it on Sunday, but I'm a little eager to get things started. So y'all getting it a day early. So I'm probably going to bump up. My previews, maybe bump a few of them up a day earlier than they were. Because I'm just ready for the season. So I decided not to wait. So I'm gonna bring y'all this one early, and we'll make our way through the conference. And by the time we get done, we'll be ready for week 0. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Bulldogs, Alabama A&M, new head coach. After a pretty long tenure for Coach Connell Manor, Bulldogs part ways and bring in Sam Shade from Miles. Um, coming with a good winning pedigree. Miles won the SIAC last season and went to the playoffs. Ironically, they lost to Valdosta State, coached by Tremaine Jackson, who is now at Prairie View. But they went 10-3 and 8-0 overall. They were a really strong defensive team last season, giving up 113 yards per game on the ground, 18 points per game. And about 186 yards through the air. So they gave up less than 300 yards total offense, 4.8 yards per play. So really a strong defensive team, which is something I think Alabama and them really needs. They haven't really been a great defensive team in years past. Under Coach Maynard, they were more offensive focused. Miles last season offensively ran for about 162 yards per game, averaged 28.7 points per game, and threw the ball for about 176 yards per game, giving them a total of 338 on the season and 5.4 yards per play. So, I think offensively, the Bulldogs should still be fine. They do have some talent back. Um, I think they're really gonna be in a position to um, kind of make some things happen offensively, with some of the returners and some of the additions. Like I said, my mentality on them is more defensively and seeing where they shake up. Looking at where the Bulldogs were last season, they actually finished second in scoring offense at 30.7 points per game. They were seventh in scoring defense, also at 30.7 points per game. Total offense, they were first at 444 yards per game, averaged about 6 yards per play. They were eighth in total defense at 367 yards per game, giving up 6.3 yards per play. They ran the ball well, 184 yards per game, which was third in the league, averaged 4.7 yards per carry. They finished sixth in rushing defense at 148.1 yards per game, gave up 4.9 yards per carry. So not bad on that in that aspect. I mean, they were only a couple yards per game off of the third place spot, so they were pretty even with the majority of the teams in rushing defense. Led the league in passing offense at 260 yards per game through 22 touchdowns, had 15 interceptions. Those 15 interceptions were the second most in the league. Um, Passing defense, they struggled there. They were 11th at 219 yards per game. Gave up 24 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Those 9 interceptions were the third fewest in the conference. Um, they allowed they finished the season allowing 20 sacks, so they were really good on the offensive line, protecting the quarterback, and obviously with the running game, they had opening up holes for the running game. So the offensive line really was a strength for them last season. They defensively they registered 21 sacks, which was seventh in the league. I love to look at third down conversion rate because that to me shows how well you can maintain drives. They converted 38% on third down, and they gave up 38.5%. So about even, but you that was eighth on defense and fourth on offense. Second and fourth down conversion rate of 65%. They went for it 29 times, which was the most in the league. Defensively, they gave up 38% on fourth down. So, they didn't really, they were pretty stingy on fourth downs, although they did face the fewest fourth down attempts in the conference. So, teams didn't typically go for it against them very often. But when they did, they weren't that successful. One other thing to look at is red zone. In the red zone, they were second in the league. They were 42 or 49 for 85%. They had 32 touchdowns in the red zone. They were 19 rushing, 13 passing. They were 9 or 12 on field goals. And they only had two red zone turnovers, a fumble, and an interception. Uh, Defensively, they were 30, 34, 40 in the red zone for 85%, 24 touchdowns allowed, 12 and 12, 10 of 11, 10 of 11 on field goals. And they only had two uh, turnovers in the red zone. They had an interception and a turnover on down. So just as good as they were in the red zone, they were that bad in the red zone on defense. So that's something, obviously that's something that's really going to need to improve. This is a team that returns, they're kind of a mixed bag of people that they're returning. Um, they don't return, they lose some key contributors. Most notably, they lose Xavier Langford at quarterback and Donovan Eaglin at running back. Couple running backs do return, so they have a decent nucleus. Not counting anybody newcomer, but they're losing over 1,300 yards and 16 touchdowns between Eaglin and Langford. Um, so they're really in a position to where um, they got to try to make some things happen in the run game. Um, I do, like I said, I do feel with the offensive line that they have, a group that's returning, quite a few guys. I think that they will be able to pave the way for a running game, which I think I think Coach Shade is definitely going to want to run the ball with a team that's probably going to maybe focus a little bit more on defense. Guys like Elias Cloyd, Tyrell Lawrence, and Taquez Richardson are going to anchor that offensive line and help them continue to churn out the yards. Um, you would think that this season um, they would have, this season would be more would be this season would be more steady um, at the quarterback spot when you think about it. But now you bring in, you returning Quad Brown, who had a really, a kind of up and down season, but was pretty solid for them last year, leading the team with 127 completions, 222 attempts. Yeah, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, completed 57% of his passes, 1,666 yards on the season. So, and that's splitting time with Xavier Langford for various reasons. He also finished with 161 yards and a touchdown on the ground on 49 carries. They do return Ryan Morrow, who played in 9 games and ran the ball for 214 yards and a touchdown. So they kind of are starting. I don't want to say they're starting fresh, but there's a lot of available carries for this team. So I think that's a key for them. But with Brown coming back at quarterback, and in the springtime, I felt like, okay, this is a guy who's gonna be the guy. He worked for it. He fought for it. He's gonna be there. But they bring in Mekhi Higgins from Pine Bluff, a guy who was the number 2 passer in the league. So when you bring in a guy that threw the ball last season for 2,500 yards and 16 touchdowns, with a new coaching staff, this thing is not concrete. I'm not quite sure which way to go. I mean, they did bring Quar Brown within the media day, and he was very impressive to me at media day. He really in tune with his squad. He knows his newcomers, and he knows obviously knows the returning guys, and he really has that quality about him. So it's gonna be interesting to see how this goes. Is this gonna be a long race? Is it gonna be you're just in case of emergency break glass type of situation? I don't really know how this is gonna go, but it's definitely probably the most interesting quarterback battle in the conference because you have 2 starter quality guys. So that's that. And when you look at transfers as a whole, um, they didn't go into the portal as much as they've done in previous seasons. They did bring a few guys from Miles, a couple guys who stand out to me. Javante Abner at tight end and Frank Pierre at wide receiver. They're gonna help out with this receiving core, who return guys like Devin Herring, who had 10 catches on the season for 273 yards. Donovan Wright also the guy that comes back in the receiving core. Um, Last season he finished with 12 catches on the season, 216 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Duke Miller, who played in 4 games last season, um, had 23 catches for 309 yards and 2 touchdowns. So these are guys who there's a lot of available catches there. You're losing uh, Keenan Hambrick and DeQuadron Welch, your top 2 receivers. So there's a lot of opportunities for some things. And an intriguing name to me at tight end is Tajarian Williams from Valley. Was former quarterback at Valley. They have him down as a tight end at Alabama A&M. So I'm interested to see what he does. Maybe they have some packages for him at quarterback. Maybe he blossoms into something. He is a bigger body guy, so the opportunity for him to be a physical guy at the tight end position is definitely there. Like I said, offensively, they did lose their leaders and statistical leaders, except for at quarterback, but there's still a lot of talent returning, and with some of the guys that they brought in from Miles, who are going to help bring in a winning culture. I think the offense is going to be fine. I don't think they are going to be, at least right now, I don't think they're going to rank as high as they did last season. but I don't think they're gonna drop off that much. To me, if you look at my biggest offensive question for the season is, can they take care of the football? Um, Last season, they turned the ball over 23 times. Like I said, they threw the most interceptions in the league, and they fumbled, and they lost 8 fumbles. So if they can take care of the football, that's gonna help their defense. When you look at a team like that, that, like I said, they lost 23 turnovers, so they were constantly, shooting themselves in the foot. Sometimes on solid drive, they would drive the ball down the field and then, make a big mistake. Defensively, they did not take the ball away as much. They had 9 interceptions and nine fumbles, so they had 18 takeaways. So they finished a -5. And when you're losing the turnover battle, that's going to cost you in close games. So you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot there. So I think taking care of the football is probably the biggest issue for this team, and taking away the football on defense. Besides shoring up the pass defense, the secondary did take some hits. Um, they don't really return a lot statistically on this in the secondary. So there are a lot of opportunities for guys to step in there and make some things happen. When you look at it, Stephen Parker comes back. He finished the season with 27 tackles and three pass breakups and 2 fumble recoveries. Also, Anthony Fieldings had 23 tackles on the season, a half a tackle for loss. He also had 1 pass breakup on the season and one forced fumble. So those are a couple guys who were there, but they losing some key guys in the secondary. But when you have a defense that allowed as many yards through the air as it did, maybe it's good. It's good to have a fresh start with a fresh set of eyes and ears leading the team. Um, Linebacker, they're very solid there. They return their two of their top tacklers at that spot. They do lose Cortez Andrews, who was all over the field at linebacker, but they return Demetrius Biombi, who finished with 42 tackles on the season, 3 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. He had a pass breakup, 2 quarterback hurries, 2 fumble recoveries, and 3 forced fumbles. Also, they return Jalen Wright, who had 40 tackles on the season, 3 tackles for loss, a half a sack. Also had 4 quarterback hurries, a fumble recovery, and a forced fumble. So those are 2 very experienced guys. They both played in a combined 23 games last season, 12 for Biombi, 11 for Wright. So they're very experienced. I think that can help this defense, because I think this defense is going to be more aggressive. So you definitely need your linebackers there. Um, and on the defensive line, there's 2 names that stand out to me. Jamarion Ellis, he finished with 34 tackles last season, had 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Also had a quarterback pass breakup and 5 quarterback hurries. And Nick Glenn is another name that came up quite a couple of times listening to Coach Shade. He had 29 tackles on the season, 5 tackles for loss, half a sack. Had 3 quarterback hurries last season. So I think the defense is gonna be. I think the defense is definitely gonna be the key for this team. If they can, embrace and buy into what's going on, and kind of, especially in the pass defense can improve some. I think this team can be it can be a factor. I do like Victor Barbosa at kicker. Um, Definitely a guy who was very consistent last season. Was 11 of 11 on field goals and 31 of 31 on extra points, finished with 64 points. The punting spot is open, so that's interesting to me. Donovan Wright is the leading return guy. He had 20.9 yards per kickoff return on the season with a longer 42 and 14.8 yards per punt return with a longer 38. So definitely a guy who has some explosiveness there. Um, all in all, it's all in buy-in. Coach Shea, this is his first year at Alabama and them. When he took over at Miles, he had to kind of work his way up. He's taken over a team that was 6-6 and 4-4. They picked preseason 4th place. in the SWAC East this season, same place that I basically have them. They are in an odd spot to me. Um, they're not. I don't think they're. I don't know how close they are to the top three teams in the division, but I think they're far enough ahead of the bottom two teams. So they're basically just stuck in a spot. And I think regardless of what happens this season, that's probably where they're going to end up at. The, so basically, like I said, if they can, they're gonna have to steal a win somewhere to finish to challenge the top three. And obviously, if you're Alabama and them, the one that you really want is in Birmingham. Hornets have won, I think, what, three straight in that matchup. So they obviously want to take that one. Um, Other than that, you're either gonna have to knock off FAMU, which is not impossible, and Jackson State. Somebody you're gonna have to knock off in front of you to move up, because there's not a lot of room for movement in this division, as compared to the West. Um, so I really think the Bulldogs have opportunity to have a solid season. I do. When you kind of look at what they have in front of them on their slate, they open up their season at Arkansas. Obviously, that's a tough game. It's a money game. Um, you really just want to make it out of there. Um, they get Alcorn to open up their home schedule in a Lewis Cruz Classic. That's a game right now. I look at it more of a toss up. Obviously, I kind of sometimes when I'm in a tie situation, I kind of lean toward home teams because teams just play better at home, especially opening up the season. But coming off of the Arkansas game, who knows? Who knows? But I do think that's more of a toss up type game. They go to Tennessee State. Um, like I said, that's a tough one on the road. So if they struggle some, they may drop it. Um, they come back for Lane College, um, which is definitely a game that they should win. They go to Bethune Cookman the following week. Again, that's another winnable game. Then they get Jackson State in Mobile and Valley following that at home. So the schedule kind of right now, in the early portions of conference play, especially, you have a tough game. Almost an easy game, but you have a little balance there. So you coming off of Jackson State, probably, going to be a tough game for you there. But then you get Valley at home before your bye week. And then you get the Magic City Classic, which right now, I do have the Hornets favored in that game. But anything can happen in that game. We all know this. So you never really are out of it. They had a chance last season. Um, so it's not, you're not like really out of the mix in this game. So if you could still win them top three games, I definitely think it's that one. Um, you followed it up at Grambling. Like I said, Gramblin's an odd team right now. Um, they have some good pieces coming back, but they lost some big pieces. And it's kind of similar. I only had this game really marked as a toss up because it's on the road. It's later in the season. You don't really know where either of these teams are going to be, mentality wise or physically. Just being on the road, coming off the Magic City Classic. If you drop that game, where you're going to be mentally in the next game. That's always a factor. So that makes that game a kind of a toss up. Um, you follow that up with Prairie View at home. The Panthers are also an enigma. There's a lot of excitement about them, but we also don't really know about them. And so, these are two teams that right now we don't really know. Um, and them playing at home kind of slides this more into a toss-up spot. And I really have it as a toss-up more because I just don't know, what either of these teams are. So, it's kind of tough to put one of them over the other. But that makes it a tougher matchup. Following that up with a home game against Florida A&M to wrap up the home schedule. You can. the Rattlers again, I think they're gonna be better than they were last season, but I don't know if how much of a favorite they will be in this game. So I have it more as a loss, but I can be convinced that it is closer to a toss up, but I have it more of a loss. And then I have them closed out at Texas Southern again, another game that I kind of view as a toss up because A, it's on the road, and B, TSU is kind of one of those deceptive teams. They can play an ugly style of ball, or they can play a physical style of ball, and they can give you some trouble. So um, again, where are you at in the end of the season can really make or break a game like this. Are you playing for an opportunity to jump into the top three, or are you just playing out the string because you drop those games in front of you and you just really, just gonna finish where you're just gonna finish where you at ahead of the other two teams. So that makes this more of a toss up type of game. And it, like I said, on the road, wrapping up the season on the road in those kind of positions is always dicey. Um, and you just don't know what that other team is going to be like coming into that game. So that's why I look at it as more of a toss up. And so I have them with a on. I have them with a projected win total of 5, but I went for again. I went for 6-6 and 4-4 because I think some of those toss ups, especially the home games, can maybe sway a little bit more their way. Um, I just think they're gonna be a team that drops those games against the top three and probably lose to. I'm gonna say they're probably gonna lose to either Prairie View or Texas Southern, and most likely they will most likely they'll beat Grambling. But you know, it's tough to really say. So like I said, that's why I kind of predict them to be more of a 4-4, 6-6 team. I think that's safe for a team like this. I just think this is a team. If they were like if they were like a country or something, they'd be landlocked. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no area for movement without really shaking some things up. So unless somebody else knocks off, if if one of the other teams in front of them drops a couple of extra games and they're able to win, then they may move. But I just think this is a team that's steady where they're at. And so I think this is an opportunity more for this team to view them in action and to view how they progress throughout the season more than record. I mean, obviously the saying is you are what your record is, but sometimes teams may not play as bad as their record is. Sometimes teams may not play as good as their record is. So, I'm looking more at this team as can they remain consistent on offense, obviously take care of the football, and can the defense just get better? Like I said, can the defense, take a little jump in in the standings. Like I said, I don't even think they need to jump that high, like in total defense. Right now they're at 8th. If they can finish 5th or 6th. I think that gives you an opportunity. That might even be another extra win. I mean, if you can shave off 4 or 5 points off your uh defense off your points allowed per game, you're gonna win at least one more game. And last season, they had a couple games get away from them, and so I think I think they have the opportunity to be better, even if they don't record wise look better. When you look at just real quick, when you look at in conference last season, they lost to Jackson State by 7, although that game was kind of deceiving. JSU kind of had a big lead, um, and they kind of fought back. They lost Alabama State by 8. They lost Southern by 5. They beat Grambling by 5, and they lost to FAMU by 8. So they had some games where they had opportunity, to win. They didn't. They couldn't close them out. So learning how to close out those games could be the difference between 5-3 or 4-4. And so with everything being new right now, and we're waiting, we got to see the buy-in, and all of that, and just how the systems work here. I think 6-6 is safe, and 4-4 is very safe. So I'm making a really safe prediction here. And I think the Bulldogs are going to be tough. I don't think they're going to be a pushover by any means, which they weren't really a pushover last season. They just sometimes couldn't get out of their own way in certain games. But I think that this season they'll be tough. I think they will improve on defense. I think offensively they may take a step back, but I don't think it's going to be a huge step back. So I think this will be an exciting team to watch, and I'm looking forward to seeing them in action. And so that's going to do it for our first preview of the season. I'm like I said, I was just so excited to get this one done. And we're gonna refine and retool them as we go. But this is our first one, so thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.